Yggaegetsu. Hard to tell how to pronounce that. Yggaegetsu. Yggaegetsu's charms feature in both Fear and Hunger games, increasing your critical hit chance by 20 or 15%. The descriptions of those items are the first source of information about Yggaegetsu. A charm said to have fallen from the robes of the wandering warrior Yggaegetsu raises critical hit rate of whoever holds it. An Eastern-style amulet that is said to have belonged to the deity of the wandering warriors, Yggaegetsu. The amulet boosts confidence in your own prowess and increases the chance of critical hits. But that's not particularly informative. The first one doesn't even call them a deity. Our more serious source is, of course, the New Gods. An old warrior deity worshipped in the far reaches of the eastern sanctuaries. Yggaegetsu seems to become more significant during times of peace, when the warriors are left without purpose. Warriors of all kinds would travel the world in search for this deity, to challenge it to a duel, to give purpose to their otherwise meaningless existence. This paints a clearer picture of this deity of wandering warriors. When one dedicated to war is left without a war, you need to find a new purpose, preferably not starting new wars yourself, so instead you may seek out Yggaegetsu to prove your skill. We know of one follower of Yggaegetsu, the Assassin Spectre. The Jingasa Kabuto and katana they have means they're either from Edo or Yansa Aryoban, a country Nasra founded to mimic Edo. Yet they found their way all the way over here to a remote dungeon in Rondon. Their centuries-old skeleton is where we get the charm of Yggaegetsu. It seems the assassin came here to purify the dungeon. This is easily related to Yggaegetsu, traveling across almost the entire known world to find an impossible task to challenge yourself with. Now earlier Yggaegetsu was called a deity, which brings up the question of what kind. Gods in Fear and Hunger have been sorted into three categories. The old gods, primordial beings that embody central concepts of the world. Ascended gods, humans that attain the power of an old god and embody more human concepts. And new gods, beings that are not nearly the kind of omnipresent god the other two are, instead being just humans given incredible powers by the Golden Throne. Yggaegetsu certainly doesn't sound like an older ascended god, not nearly that important or influential. So the main thing left is new god. And Yggaegetsu isn't too dissimilar to a new god. They sound like a very powerful human, but there's a few oddities there. Most obviously, new gods are normally referred to by their soul type. The Endless One, the Radiating One, and the like. There's also been several opportunities to call Yggaegetsu a new god, like when you ask the new gods in the hall about Yggaegetsu and they don't mention it, unlike every other new god you can ask them about. New gods also don't normally manage to last very long, as their powers seem to fade over time, and they can still take permanent injuries until they eventually decide to retire to the Hall of the Gods. And typically their worship is very, very quickly forgotten, with historians and archaeologists denying the existence of many new gods we know of. So a new god isn't impossible, but I think it doesn't seem quite right. And there is one other thing. There's this tweet from Miro answering a question about Vitruvia and Yggaegetsu, where he says, "I don't think Vitruvia is ever mentioned being a god, nor Yggaegetsu for that matter. Or am I wrong?" Let's just show that text about Yggaegetsu again. It is called a deity multiple times. Deity and god are nearly exact synonyms to my knowledge. Deity comes from deus, Latin for god. I don't know what the difference would be. But it does seem that Miro thinks this difference means something, and my suspicion is that it's because these two deities are not any of the types of gods we've seen so far. So, my proposal then, I think that Yggaegetsu is a god in the same way Ragnvaldr is, the god of UltraViolence. Now that does use the word god, so maybe that mirror quote messes with this, but even though Ragnvaldr is called a god, he's not any of those known god types still. You know the darkness doesn't end to the dungeons. You've witnessed the same evil in the faraway continent of Vinland, and that same corrupting force lurks in every dark corner of the world. It is restless and relentless. For you to stop it from spreading, you also need to be restless and relentless. From the moment you escaped the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, you dedicated your life in hunting down those that are conceived by the darkness. You'd hunt down all the macabre beasts that hid from the eyes of the oblivious Western world. The beasts would come to know your name, the god of UltraViolence. Ragnvaldr didn't become an ascended god, or sit on the throne to become a new god. Instead, it seems he dedicated himself to hunting monsters. He doesn't even sound like much of a god, honestly. It seems overdramatic. But there is something to it. It is cut dialogue, though, so it's always a bit dubious to use as important evidence, but it's way too interesting to ignore. This is part of an alternate version of Kaiser's speech when you meet him in the bunker. I have the whole thing on an old Reddit post linked at the top of the description. Here's the relevant part. Humans might have been born from the darkness and then thrusted into the chaos. But chaos doesn't exist just for the sake of it. Chaos is constantly looking for shape. The reason why it twists in agony is because it hasn't found its final form yet. A man can find their final shape, but that shape does not represent humanity as a whole. At best, they reach their own potential, their own personal godhood. I've witnessed humans reach close to even more abstract final forms, closer to those of the older gods. But no matter how pure they were while still human, not tainted by the collective consciousness, at best they could represent only one aspect of humanity. So towards the end he's talking about the god of fear and hunger, a human close to the form of an old god. But right before it he's talking about something different. At best they reach their own potential, their own personal godhood. The only thing I can think of this referring to is the god of UltraViolence. Ragnvaldr didn't become a god in any previously known sense, but he found his final shape, reached his true potential, and attained his personal godhood. How does this relate to Yggaegetsu? Well, it describes a new type of god, unlike any prior one, and a type of god that would fit Yggaegetsu very well. An idealized wandering warrior, one of great skill, so great that you wear pieces of their robe to try to gain the skill they had, that in times of peace you seek out as an alternative to war, focusing your life on a similar journey to what Yggaegetsu must have had, wandering and training, similar to how Ragnvaldr dedicated his life to hunting down monsters and reaching his full potential. The Assassin Spectre was on a similar journey to Ragnvaldr, hunting this source of darkness half the world away, and Ragnvaldr was influenced by the Assassin Spectre, as in Termina, Moonless has the Eastern Sword, so Ragnvaldr would have been the one told by the ghost to finish my task, O worthy. And it seems he did, considering Ragnvaldr also left with at least miasma, only obtainable by defeating Crowmauler. So that would mean Ragnvaldr became the god of UltraViolence by following the mission of the Assassin Spectre, who was following the path of Yggaegetsu. So if Ragnvaldr reached his own potential, his own personal godhood, by dedicating his life to perfection and hunting monsters in a way similar to Yggaegetsu, I think it makes sense then that Yggaegetsu originally achieved their own godhood by dedicating themselves to becoming a perfect warrior. This theory is a little lower on evidence than I normally prefer. This is a bit more theme, idea, and vibe based, but I think this just makes a lot of sense. It also doesn't explain Vitruvia, who may need to be connected considering Mira made the distinction between God and Deity for Vitruvia and Yggaegetsu. We'll see if this gets disproven. Mira did say there will be some non-answers on Yggaegetsu in the update, so I'm rushing this so I can say I called it if it gets proven by the extra pieces we get.